Hey guys! So today's video is going to be about mean, median, and mode, and maybe also we'll get into some mean, absolute deviation, or standard deviation. So I'm going to pose a question or challenge or a puzzle, and I want you guys to try to figure it out and pause the video to do so after I tell you the question. So let's say you're trying to figure out the kind of typical or regular amount of apples or apple products that any typical normal person would eat in a day. And ideally you'd want to survey the entire world and get all their data and then take the average or the median, whatever you want, right? Mean, median, or mode. But you're only working with 9 of your friends in this case, and you want to take their numbers and do the math with that and then hope that you can apply it to other people. Considering this is kind of just a random group of friends that you surveyed. So one person ate 2 apples on this random Tuesday, or apple products. One person ate 4, one person ate 3, 0, 7, 3 people ate 1, and then one person ate 312. And you're also starting to suspect that this person is not from this planet. But that's a whole other question. So you are trying to figure out the typical amount of apples that a typical person would eat based on this data set, though. So how do you interpret this data set, and how do you assign values or quantities to the typical amount of apples eaten per day? So using this data set and then applying it to a larger scale, how many apples would a regular person eat? So pause the video and try to figure out how to interpret this and how to get the mean, median, and mode, and maybe the outliers, stuff like that. Okay, so the first thing that you have to do is actually understand what this question is asking you to do. So what are you asked to find or show? You're asked to find or show the mean, median, and mode, and also interpret the data in a way that makes sense, and I'll get more into that. Like, do you include outliers? Do you not include outliers? Do you include them when doing the mean or the median, stuff like that. You also want to understand this problem in, can you rewrite it in your own words? Can you kind of think of a picture or a diagram? Is there enough information to actually help you find the solution? So, stuff like that. Okay, now that we understand the question, or, take some time to understand the question, you want to make a plan on how to solve it. So there's different plans and strategies that you can come up with to solve this kind of problem. You can make a visual representation. You can sort the numbers, the data, in a different way, maybe from least to greatest, or odds and evens, whatever you feel is best. But again, ultimately, we're trying to find the mean, median, and mode. And also maybe the quartiles if you really want to go in depth in the data set. And do we actually want to include the outlier or outliers in our data? So these are the questions that you want to be asking yourself and planning around. Okay, so now step 3, we want to carry out this plan. So I personally would, because we're trying to find the mean, median, and mode, I would rewrite this data set from least to greatest for the median, right? And that will also just kind of help us organize our kind of thoughts. So I would it goes 0, 1, 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, and then 312. Alright, so again, we can also make a visual representation of the data, which maybe I'll do a little later. But right now, we can figure out the median. So there are 9 numbers here, so this will go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that's a 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5. Okay, so 2 is the median of this data set. So we know that 2 could be median, but let's just consider the 312th person, right? We'll say his name's George, and he has something going on. Like, I don't think the normal person would eat 312 apples per day. So do we get rid of that number? Do we start from here and then do it. So it would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Sorry, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then the median is actually right in between here, so it would be 1.5. So what we're really asking ourselves now is which data do we include and which ones do we get rid of? Like, can we consider 7 to be an outlier in comparison to 312? What if that 312 wasn't there? Would we still put 7 in the data set, or would it be an outlier considering all the rest of them are less than or greater equal to or less than 4? So this is the kind of stuff that I have to be thinking about when interpreting this. But so far, the answer is between 1.5 and 2. And if we got rid of 7, then it would be 1. So right now, we're kind of thinking 1 to 2 apples per day on average. Okay, that's the median. Now we can try to find the mean of the data set. So that would be the average. And to do that, you add up all the numbers and you divide with how many numbers there are in total. So we could add up 2 plus 4 plus 3 plus 0 plus 7 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 312 and then divide by 9. Or we can take out the 312. So I want you guys to try both ways right now and see how the numbers differ. Okay, so I'm just going to go over some of the means that you could have gotten. So if you kept the 312, then the average that you would have gotten would have been 36.7 with the vinculum over it. And this just means that this 7 goes on forever. That's what the little line above it means. And it's called a vinculum. Fun fact. Okay, so we also, if we got rid of the 312, then you could have gotten 2.375 as your other mean, removing that outlier. And if you decided to remove the 7, then you would have gotten 1.714 as your mean. So let's compare these to the medians. Obviously, this one is nowhere close. I mean, it's definitely the average when taking all the numbers, but it is really not representative of what the normal or what the most people kind of eat per day. So I think we can safely rule this one out, which is why it's important to do different kind of tests or experiments with the data set. It's kind of like science in math. You have to do different tests and try to figure out which one best represents the data accurately. Even though, oh yes, this is, technically including all the numbers, it's still not accurate, which is why this kind of gets kind of complicated. The next one, including everything except for the 312, you would get 2.375, which is above our median, which is fine. It's not that far above it, but our median was it was anywhere from 1 to 2-ish, and we got 2.375. And then taking out the 7, so 1 plus 0 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 divided by 7, you would get 1.714, which is in between, which is more kind of closely related to our median, right? It's kind of in our little 1 to 2 range of our median. And so that's pretty interesting. But let's do the mode now and just see where that gets us. So the mode is the number that repeats the most in the data set. So looking at this, we can see it's 1. 1 happens 3 times. Everything else only occurs 1 time. So 1 would be our mode. Okay, so right now, for our data, we have our median is anywhere from 1 to 2-ish, depending on how you look at it, right? Our mean is anywhere from about 1.714 to 2.375, again, depending on what you make of it. We're just ruling that out right now. It doesn't even make any sense. And then our mode is 1. So just looking at this, I would say that I would probably go with like 1.5 or 1.714 because it's closest to our mode. That's in the range of the median that we figured out. And we kind of got rid of that 7 outlier, which some people might argue isn't really an outlier, isn't that much an outlier, but it does affect the data in a way that is significant. So I would go with one of those numbers. But the thing is, this is why you kind of, when they give you kind of stats reports, it's not all accurate. You can really lie with statistics very easily. Like, you could have said, well, the average of the data set is 36.7, like 37. The average person eats 37 apples or apple products a day, which simply is not true. I don't know who the heck that guy is, but he seriously has a health problem, so you don't want to include him, right? But maybe, what if that number, instead of 312, maybe it was 8? Then would we still include it? Would we include that and the 7, or would we get rid of both? So you have to ask yourself these questions when you're doing this kind of stuff. Oh, and I forgot to mention, but another cool way of thinking about the mode is just kind of probability. Like, if you're picking these numbers out of a hat, which one would be the most likely that you would pick? And yeah, hope that made sense and was kind of fun and entertaining.